Good afternoon. My name is Michael Gerard. I teach environmental law and climate change law here at the law school. Welcome to this event, which is co-sponsored by the Sabin Center for Climate Change Law, which I run, and the Environmental Law Society. California is the fourth largest economy in the world, behind only the US, China, and Germany. It's the home of more Fortune 500 companies than any other state. And most of the rest of the Fortune 500 do business in California, and therefore they're subject to the laws of California, in some instances even for activities outside California. And so what happens in California does definitely not stay in California. In my field, environmental law, federal regulations generally are the floor, not the ceiling. The current federal administration has been lowering the floor, and therefore it's up to the states to raise the ceiling. California has for years been raising the ceiling of environmental regulation, and thankfully they're continuing to do so. It's my great honor this afternoon to introduce the chief legal officer of this massive economy. Rob Bonta was born in Quezon City, the Philippines. His family immigrated to the United States when he was an infant. He worked his way through college and received both bachelor's and law degrees from Yale, with the year in between at Oxford. We will forgive him for choosing New Haven over Morningside Heights. He clerked for a year, and then he became an associate in a law firm in San Francisco. He worked as a deputy city attorney for the city and county of San Francisco from 2003 to 2012. He was elected to the Alameda City Council in 2010, and 2 years later was elected to the State Assembly. He was appointed Attorney General by Governor Gavin Newsom in 2021 to fill a vacancy, and was elected to a full 4-year term in 2022. The California Department of Justice, which Attorney General Bonta heads, has more than 1,000 lawyers and more than 5,400 employees in all, including investigators, sworn peace officers, and many others. After the Attorney General gives his talk, I'll ask him a question or two, and then we will open it up for questions from all of you. So please join me in welcoming Attorney General Bonta.
Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Good to see you. First, thank you, Professor Gerard, for the very kind introduction. Look forward to the conversation after my opening remarks here. I do want to say when I first walked in, I saw the long line and I said, these are some folks based in New York who are really focused on the work of the California Attorney General. Maybe even some of them are supportive of our work and our fight, and then I saw the pizza inside and realized that the pizza was the attraction. So as the secondary attraction today, I am happy to talk to you a little bit about the work that we're doing in the California Attorney General's office. I'll talk a little bit about my path to the law, which I know many of you are thinking of right now, kind of the state of the rule of law in this nation, in this moment. And then open it up to questions and talk about whatever you want to talk about. But I will first say we are in a uniquely challenging moment. And we are in a country that is not new to challenges. We've seen worse challenges than this. I'll say that. We've had a civil war. We've had world wars. We've had global pandemics. We've had depressions and recessions. And it's a reminder that there's always a need to fight for the principles, the pillars, the foundational components that make our democracy the unique democracy that it is. A city on the hill, a aspiration for many, a beacon of hope and light for many around the world, including my family when they decided to bring me here to the United States when I was an infant. And it requires cultivation and attention and focus and work. It can't just stand by and assume and wait for the democracy to thrive, it takes people power, and we'll talk about that at the end. But I want to just focus on the rule of law a little bit right now. You, many of you, well, let me just first say, who's a law student? Okay, a lot. Who's a first-year law student? Nice. Second? Third? All right, good mixture. LLMs? Sweet. And then the undergrads? Okay, all right, undergrads holding it down. Good. Okay, so we got a good mix. Are the undergrads thinking about going to law school one day? Yes. Okay, seeing some nods. All right. So maybe some of you are asking yourself, did I make the right decision going to law school? And I'm here to tell you, absolutely. Right now, we need more than ever people who are committed to the rule of law, who are truth seekers and truth tellers, who believe in the facts, who believe in science, and who apply the law to it and know that we are a nation that's based on the rule of law, not the rule of one man or any particular leader, but a uniform set of rules that apply to all. And that is under threat right now. I wish it weren't so. I take no joy or pleasure in saying that. But we are seeing quite a bit of, one, unlawful activity, and I'll talk about what we've seen in the cases that we've brought to me. And this is affirmed by the many court victories that we have. We have a federal administration that is trampling over the law and violating the Constitution with consistency, unfortunately, and sometimes appears to believe that the law is an inconvenient barrier to their advancement of their agenda. And there is no doubt that elections matter and elections have consequences, and a new administration can advance its agenda. You shouldn't need to say it, but of course, it is only true that you could advance your agenda lawfully. You cannot advance your agenda in unlawful ways. I think that's basic. I think that's simple. We're seeing an administration that is going after, like literally directly after lawyers, going after law firms, those who dare to represent a client that is someone that the president doesn't approve of. And attorneys can represent whatever clients they want to represent. And those who are forgotten, who have been abused, hurt or harmed, those who are already judged guilty in the court of public opinion, all deserve attorneys who will stand up for them, represent them legally and ethically, and be their fiduciary, be their zealous advocate through the litigation system. And we should not have an administration, a federal government. It's a government of, for, by the people. A federal government who is attacking the legal profession, attacking the ability to associate with clients, to represent certain clients, to do certain pro bono work. That should not be what the federal government gets involved with, but yet here we are. I'll also say this, that the law firms that have stood up for their rights, that have fought back, that have said, I will see you in court if you try to violate my rights, they have won, and they have prevailed. And so there is honor in the fight, and there is success when you fight. And if the firms did something wrong and they're trying to manage their liability, go ahead, resolve your case, settle in the way that you think is best. But if you've done nothing wrong, if you have exercised your rights to represent clients that you believe deserve representing, and you've represented them zealously and legally and ethically, it doesn't matter what the president says. You may do that. You're allowed to do that. You're legally entitled to do that. And you should fight for that right. So I say this to say this is a moment where rights are being, they're being violated sometimes through official actions. And we'll talk about that. See birthright citizenship, see voting rights. We have 2 cases on those issues. But they're also being attacked and infringed upon through pressure, through threats, through bullying, through intimidation. And some in our profession, in the legal profession, who fight every day, who fight for their clients, who litigate for a profession, have caved, have capitulated, have acquiesced. And I think that that is wrong, in my humble opinion. They have to make the decision that's best for them. They're looking at numbers, they're looking at profit. I get it. But this is about principle. This is about a profession that is critical to the future of this country, that upholds the rule of law, that uses the rule of law as a force for good. And we must fight for the ongoing ability to do that when it is wrongfully attacked. So thank you for choosing the law. Honestly, I've had many people recently who have asked me, is going to law school, do I recommend it? And I will say unconditionally, unequivocally, I recommend it. I know that there are calculations that everyone has to make. It's 3 years of law school. You don't need me to tell you. That comes with a lot of student debt. I had a ton of student debt. My wife had a ton of student debt. We both went to undergrad and law school together. We paid it off over many years, and it was very difficult. We didn't get any of the federal program support. There are available options at the federal level to forgive student debt, and that is a real consideration. But if you're wondering if the rule of law is alive and well, if it's a tool that's important in our society, just look at this moment. It's probably the most important tool right now, and it's worth fighting for, and worth defending, worth nurturing, worth protecting. So you've chosen the right profession. I'm excited to see what you all do next. I will say, I would be very remiss if I didn't say the California DOJ is hiring. We would love for you to consider our office as a place to start your careers or build your careers. We feel we have a very mission-driven office where it's full of purpose and helping and service. And if that's something that excites you and you want to be on the front lines of the biggest issues in society today, you just open up a newspaper. Don't even open up, just look at the front page. Some of you are looking at me and are like, what's a newspaper? Or go online and look at any headline. There's a very strong likelihood that our office is directly involved in the issue that you're reading about. And so I dreamed in law school about being able to be an attorney that had purpose, that had meaning, that helped shape our future, that helped make our society more fair, more just, and better. And I can tell you, I never thought I would be the Attorney General of the state of California. Someone born in another country, brought here by my parents, raised by an immigrant from the Philippines, and raised by working class parents who were state employees, hardworking middle class family. Never thought I would get into elected office, never thought I would be the Attorney General. I will confess to you that sometimes I secretly go online to the California DOJ website to see if my photo and my name are really there, and get very excited when I see it. It's affirming to see that I am actually the AG, and that we can do more important work fighting for the people of our great state, and standing for the rule of law, democracy, rights, freedoms, protections in this moment. So please consider our office if you think that the work that I'm about to talk to you about and that you know about is of interest to you. We want to hire top talent to help us achieve our mission. So I talked a little bit about this, and the professor mentioned it in his opening remarks. I was born in another country, and I was born in the Philippines at a time when my parents looked at themselves and asked themselves, can we raise our son here and now and ensure that he has the things that we consider non-negotiable, that these are must-haves, not nice-to-haves for him, that he have freedom, that he have democracy, that he have the rule of law, due process, human rights, civil rights. And their answer, unfortunately, then was no. And they were right. A dictator was rising to power. The Ferdinand Marcos dictatorship was around the corner. Martial law was declared exactly a year from the date of my birth. And when it was declared, free and fair elections were over. Democracy, as it was known in the Philippines up to that point, gone. Political opponents, those who dared to speak up and speak out and say, we don't want people arrested without due process, we don't want people tortured, they were arrested. They were imprisoned. They were tortured. They were often killed. And my parents did not want that for me. And they brought me here to the United States, to California. And they also knew that you can't just put your chin on your elbow, look out the window, and hope and wait for the things that you want. You got to go get them. You got to go fight for them. You got to go work for them. You got to roll up your sleeves and be engaged, be active, participate, try to manifest what you want. And so they started working for the United Farm Workers of America. They started with the lettuce boycott in Los Angeles. They gathered signatures outside of supermarkets. They rolled up their sleeves, had clipboards, and then got recruited to go to the headquarters of the UFW in La Paz, the headquarters outside of Bakersfield in the Central Valley. My family lived in a trailer for the 5 of us. We lived a stone's throw away from the home of Cesar Chavez. My dad worked in the front office with Cesar Chavez. He helped set up healthcare clinics for farm workers. My mom worked in the preschool with the great Dolores Huerta. And they were fighting for a fair contract for the people who were feeding our state, feeding our nation, who were overlooked and being mistreated. They fought for things like shade breaks and water breaks and bathroom breaks for the workers toiling in the heat in the fields. They fought for a fair contract, for fair pay, to make sure that they were compensated for that important work that they did. And I was young at the time, but the impact has never left me. My parents would tell me about those times, tell me about that fight. And what I came away with was that these were everyday people, my parents included. No fancy titles, no massive fortunes, no positions of massive power, but they were everyday people who together, collectively, were committed to a common good, to a common outcome, to a fight for justice, who were not willing to look away when they saw the injustice. They were willing to fight and commit to changing it. And that when people come together across their differences, and this was a movement started by Filipino farm workers and Latino farm workers, later joined by white Americans and black Americans, and a huge coalition fighting for justice together, that when you create that, you cannot be stopped. And the change will happen. The only question is when. And the only question is if you continue to fight and when. And so I'm grateful that my parents were involved in that movement that has helped shape me and what I wanted to do with my career and my life. My dad had earlier been involved in the civil rights movement. My mom, in 1965, had taken a ship for 3 weeks from the Philippines to Berkeley, to the Bay Area, to go to grad school. And then there she met my father, who had gone to community college in Ventura County in Southern California, first in his family to go to a 4-year college. He went to Cal, and then he went to grad school. So they were, in 1965, their lives and their paths intersected. And it was 1965 in Berkeley, California, a time of change, of questioning the status quo, of demanding more fairness, more justice. The Delano grape strike of 1965, which launched the California farm labor movement, was happening, and it was being led by Larry Itliong, a Filipino farm worker. And my mom felt she had to be there and be part of that movement, of that action, of that strike. My dad had a friend across the country in Selma, Alabama, who was organizing with other students and sending him across the country through the US mail these audio cassette tapes. Okay, I got blank stares on audio cassette tapes. Old technology, record sound, you can record voices, you can record music, and if you want, you can have a cassette that you send in the mail to people like my dad. And he was getting these audio cassette tapes in the mail, and it was the recorded voice of Martin Luther King Jr., like literally being sent to him in the mail from his friend across the country, who was saying, you have to listen to this man, to this vision, I hope you're inspired by it as you listen to it, as I am. And my dad was. He saw this as a call to action. He jumped on a train and felt he had to go there and be part of the organizing. So he took an Amtrak, 3 days, arrives in Selma, Alabama, meets Stokely Carmichael when he was there, organizes for civil rights and voting rights, happens to be in Brown Chapel AME Church when Martin Luther King Jr. himself, unannounced, appeared and gave a sermon in the middle of the civil rights movement in Selma, Alabama, in the 1960s. And fast forward, my parents finished their work with the United Farm Workers of America after multiple years. We eventually moved to Sacramento, California. And that's where I was raised as a young boy. I went to California public schools all the way through, graduated from high school. And one of my most lasting memories as a young boy was going to demonstrations and rallies and protests with my mom. Voluntold by my mom to join her at these protests. A loyal son, fist in the air, slogans in my mouth, holding the placards. And we were protesting the human rights abuses of Ferdinand Marcos in the Philippines, like literally another continent, another country, an ocean away. And I always wondered as a young boy what that could mean. What are we doing here? Besides being voluntold by mom that I had to be there, what is our purpose and how are we going to accomplish anything? And I realized we would do this year after year. And I realized each year we weren't alone. There were more sons and daughters and moms and dads speaking up and speaking out. There were people that I didn't see who were doing the same thing, people in other cities and other states, and people in the Philippines rising up and hitting the streets and demanding change. Until 14 years from the declaration of martial law, the people of the Philippines went to the streets and didn't go home until the dictator was chased out of the country. And that was the People Power Revolution of 1986. And that was another example to me that everyday people who refuse to accept the unacceptable, who push for change, who recognize their power and use their agency, can change the world, can restore democracy to a nation, can chase a dictator out of the country. And those movements, from the civil rights movement, the farm worker movement, the restoration of democracy movement in the Philippines, that all shaped my goal and role in pursuing the law. And I'll say also, as a boy in high school, I cracked open To Kill a Mockingbird, and I was like, Atticus Finch is the man. And if that's what being an attorney is, someone who stands up for justice, who stands up for what's right, sometimes stands alone if necessary, fights for the person who's being mistreated and abused, navigates them through a challenging, intimidating process, I want to be one. And I continue to think, that was, a young boy's romanticized view of the law, but that is still the law at its best. Seeking justice and finding justice, standing up for the victim, standing up for the person that's hurt and harmed and abused. And that's what I try to do now. I see myself as the people's attorney, fighting for everyday people, people who are being mistreated, people who are being abused, and letting them know that their government cares about them, sees them, fights for them, will fight for justice for them. And sometimes that also means fighting against injustice wherever it comes from. And sometimes that means fighting against the federal government when it acts unlawfully, when it acts unconstitutionally. And we do a lot of things at the California DOJ. We're doing all the same things we did before, now that Trump is in power. But we are definitely doing more when it comes to pushing back against unlawful and unconstitutional actions by the Trump administration. Public safety is always job number 1, 2, and 3. We're tackling hate crimes and fentanyl and drug and gun trafficking and organized retail crime. We're trying to protect the expansions to high-quality, affordable health care. We're defending civil rights and constitutional rights, consumer protections. We're pushing cities to build more housing consistent with state law. We're focused on our climate progress and climate action, and we're talking about that here during Climate Week in New York. So we're doing all that. And that is all great for me, because I was someone who, as an elected official in my first office, was the recipient of some unsolicited advice, and someone said to me, you're not going to be able to do it all, pick 1 or 2 issues, leave the rest for someone else. Make those your signature issues, you'll be known for them, and you can go deep on them. And I've never taken that advice, I never will. I like to do as much as possible. I think that whatever is most important to one of my constituents is the most important thing in their life. And if we can have someone that can help on that issue, we should. And we shouldn't say, there's no way I'm going to tell that person, I'm sorry, you didn't make the cut as one of my top 1 or 2 or 3 issues, so I can't help you. Never going to do that. Our job is public service. So our top issues, people ask me, what are your top issues? We don't chart it in a room, at the beginning of every year. Our top issues are the people's top issues. They change, they evolve, and we need to be responsive to them. They're my bosses. I come up for a job review every 4 years. And my hope is I will get a positive job review and be able to have the honor and privilege of continuing to serve. But our job, our role, what is necessary is that we fight for the people on the issues that are most important to them. Right now, it's very important in California that we defend and protect the rule of law, democracy, rights, and freedoms as they are under attack from, unfortunately, the federal administration. I wish it weren't true. I wish I didn't have to make that statement, but it's true. We have sued the federal government 39 times in 35 weeks. We've sued more than once a week. And it is not because I like to brag about that. I wish that weren't true. It's not because the Democratic AGs, and when I say we, it's the Democratic Attorneys General, including Tish James from New York, California, Illinois, and there's 23 of us total. I wish we didn't have to sue at all. I wish we had sued 0 times, because that would mean that the Trump administration is following the law and complying with the Constitution. In my humble opinion, not a lot to ask that the President of the United States of America follow the law, comply with the U.S. Constitution. A reminder, raised his right hand and swore to protect and defend the laws and the U.S. Constitution, and then that same day, January 20th, Inauguration Day, proceeded to violate it. That day, he issued multiple executive orders, including an executive order to attempt, with one stroke of the pen, amend the Constitution and repeal a right, the right of birthright citizenship, guaranteed in the 14th Amendment. Can't do it, we sued. We've been winning in every court that's decided on this issue. So sometimes people have asked, do you feel like you're successful with these lawsuits? Sometimes people call it, what do they call it? Lawfare. I don't even know what that is. We bring lawsuits when the law's been broken. It's simple. If the Trump administration complies with the law, we don't sue. If the Trump administration breaks the law and hurts California, we sue. That's it. We have one North Star, the rule of law. Is it violated? If we have political grievance and nothing more, we don't sue. If we have ideological or policy difference and nothing more, we don't sue. And we can't sue. We would go into court and get thrown out. The judge would be like, why are you here? What are your facts? What is your legal theory? And we have gone in and sought emergency relief 23 times when a court has ruled so far. We've sought more times than that, but 23 times in which a court has ruled. Of those 23 orders, and this is a request for a temporary restraining order or preliminary injunction, where the court is asking itself, are you likely to succeed on the merits and will you suffer irreparable harm? We've won 21 times of 23, over 90% of the time. We've almost run the table every time that we've sued, sought a restraining order, and the court has ruled. And that is not a good record for the Trump administration. It is a great record for the rule of law and upholding it. And sometimes folks have asked us, what are your priorities? What are you focused on? We don't have the luxury of having our priorities. What we do depends on what the Trump administration does. It depends on what he decides to break the law on. And our hope is that he won't break the law. But he has not proven that that is likely to be the case going forward, and it certainly hasn't been the case in the first 35 weeks. So we've covered a lot of ground in our lawsuits, but they do fall into a couple of major buckets. One is the Trump administration is repeatedly trying to revoke and withhold already congressionally appropriated funding, funding that a co-equal, separate branch of government that has the power to appropriate and to spend has spent and decided to spend, and he thinks wrongly that he can stop it. And he can't. We've gone to court multiple times with that argument in hand, and we've won multiple times, including the second case that we ever brought when late at night we caught wind of an Office of Management and Budget memo that sought to withhold $3 trillion worth of funding across the country, including $168 billion for the state of California that covered all sorts of critical funding. For example, housing and healthcare, food programs, childcare programs, college programs, public safety programs. And we decided this was a problem. We weren't geniuses in coming to that conclusion, but that if that memo were able to be implemented, people were going to get hurt. And so we needed to act immediately. And so the Democratic AGs are communicating shortly after we catch wind of the memo. I remember it was late on the West Coast. It was probably close to midnight, if not after, here on the East Coast. And we decided we needed to file a lawsuit by the next morning. And we needed to work through the night and have a complaint on file and seek a restraining order because we could not let this Office of Management and Budget memo, which is so unlawful, hurt people and pull away funding, safety net funding that people rely on for their health care and for their food and for the roof over their head. And so we did. I'll say collective we, our team worked through the night, drinking coffee and pushing, mission-driven as they were, with no desire to be recognized, but because that's the purpose. So Another shameless plug. That's how we roll in the California DOJ. If you wanna join our office, and we got a restraining order, and within 24 hours, we were able to block that very harmful, unlawful action. But one bucket is trying to withhold funding that Congress has already appropriated. There's also this attempt by the Trump administration to strip away constitutional rights. I mentioned birthright citizenship earlier. There's a way to amend the Constitution. It can be done. It's hard to be done by design. You need 2/3 votes in each house. You need 3/4 of the states to ratify. That's the way to do it if that's what you want to do. You cannot do it by a stroke of the pen. And so we've sued on protecting birthright citizenship, protecting voting rights. There was an attempt to implement some new tests and barriers before people can vote, and also not allow timely cast vote-by-mail ballots to be counted if they are cast timely but arrive after Election Day, and that millions of votes are cast that way and arrive that way, and should be counted. And we believe it's unlawful. We've got a restraining order on that executive order as well. So those are some examples of the lawsuits that we have. We've also sued because of DOJ's invasion of privacy into people's Social Security information and bank account information. We have a tariffs lawsuit that's going to the US Supreme Court. Not our particular case, we brought our own in California, but our Democratic attorneys general who sued in the Court of International Trade. And we don't think that Trump can implement and impose tariffs based on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA. Doesn't mention the word tariffs. Never been used ever in 50 years to impose tariffs. Yet he's used it to impose tariffs on over 200 states, including the United States' biggest trading partners, Mexico, Canada, China. Every court who's decided on this issue so far has agreed with us. We believe the US Supreme Court will as well. We'll see what the argument's like in November. But that's just a taste of some of our cases. I want to end with this as I just wrap up, and I'm looking forward to your questions and our conversation. Now is a time for three things I think to be really lifted up and to focus on. And my amazing colleague from Arizona, AG Chris Mays, said this for the first time, and I really liked it, so now I'm saying it and attributing it to her. The 3 C's are really important: crowds, courts, and courage. And the three C's. And courts are important right now because that continues to be a place where you can bring the receipts, you can bring the facts, you can bring the legal analysis, you can have a neutral arbiter look at your case and objectively decide if you're right or wrong and issue an order that stops and blocks unlawful conduct if it is indeed unlawful. And AGs are going to court. NGO partners are going to court. Public subdivisions are going to court, cities and counties. The rule of law is alive and well, and courts are interpreting the law and issuing orders that are appropriate to uphold the rule of law. That continues to be a place where we can protect the fundamentals of our democracy. Crowds are critical right now. People speaking up and speaking out. There seems to be a strategy of intimidation and bullying to silence people and chill speech and have people be silent. I think it's important to remind government elected officials who their bosses are. And Trump's bosses are not his billionaire buddies or greedy corporations. His bosses are you and me and we and us, the people. A government of, for, by the people. We express our bosshood through voting, but we also do it through peaceful protests. And I want to emphasize peaceful. Going out to the streets, the rawest, most powerful form often of a democratic voice in our process, hitting the streets en masse, sometimes across cities and across states. No King's Day or hands off, and speaking out against what is unacceptable and speaking for the things that we demand in our government and from our elected officials. We need to continue to do that. And I'll say finally that courage is important, and unfortunately, it probably sounds obvious. Like, why am I saying it? I'm saying it because not everyone's demonstrating it. And courage is contagious. Being craven and being acquiescing is also contagious. And so it's important to have courage, meaning if your rights are violated, they need to be vindicated. If someone tells you, I'm going to violate your rights and take something from you, You don't say, what can I give you? You say, I'll see you in court. And you defend yourself, and you protect yourself, and you stand up for yourself. And if we continue to fight, if we continue to have courage, if we continue to have crowds, if we continue to go to the courts, I am hopeful and I am optimistic we will prevail. But we must fight. Sitting back and sitting home is not going to get the job done. And I tell people, some people have asked me, what should we do? And I tell people who aren't doing anything, do something. It's a Michelle Obama quote. And I tell people who are doing something, do more. Now is the time to dig deep and meet the moment and rise to the occasion and do more than you already have. If you care about our democracy, if you want to fight for it, if you believe that the American experiment and our American democracy is one of the greatest experiments in the history of this world, it needs to be nurtured. Democracy thrives on engagement, participation, activism. It dies in the dark. It dies with neglect. It dies with apathy. Don't look to your left or right for the cavalry. You're it. You need to be the one to act. You need to do something. And you can. And I'll just say, some people are sad these days, anxious, worried, scared. Get it. Some people want to turn off the TV and turn away from what's happening. I understand. That is a natural feeling in this moment. I will tell you that when you turn off the TV and when you turn away, it's still happening. It doesn't go away. And to take on challenges, you need to confront them and face them and do the work, sometimes very hard work, to address them. And people have that agency. So I want to tell you, don't feel hopeless because you're not helpless. You have agency. You have power. In fact, you have the most potent power that there is in a democracy, which is people power. You have a voice. You have a say. There are more chapters to be written in the story of New York, in the story of California, in the story of the United States of America. You're going to write it. We're going to write it. The people are going to write that story because we have the agency to do that. So stay engaged, stay enraged about the abuse of power, the violations of the law, the violations of the Constitution. Stay active, stay committed. I believe that it is inevitable that we will prevail, but it has two conditions, that we stay focused and engaged, and that we continue to fight. If we continue to fight, I know we'll win. Happy to take your questions.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start with the question, then I'll open it up to the group. President Trump sent National Guards troops to Los Angeles over the objections of the governor and the mayor. He's threatened to send troops to New York. He's also threatened that if Zohran Mamdani is elected mayor, that it'll take away federal funding. Do you have advice for New York on how we should deal with that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So it won't be a surprise. Fight, stand up for your rights. If the law is violated, then sue. And in the examples that you've been presenting, I believe that the law would be violated. We're seeing a very dangerous pattern and repeat action by the president with deployment of military to American cities, on American soil, to police American people. It's illegal to do that. You cannot use the military for civilian law enforcement. It's the Posse Comitatus Act. It was forged in the creation of our nation when the British monarchy was using military to police the colonies and enshrined in statute since the late 1800s, post-Civil War. It is a fundamental principle and pillar of who we are as a nation. The military can be deployed only under certain circumstances, essentially emergency circumstances. There has to be an invasion or a rebellion it's called an inability to enforce the laws with the regular forces. That was what was invoked when the military was deployed in LA. We believe wrongfully so. There was no authority for it. We had a federal district court judge who wrote a great opinion that I think was rightfully decided, siding with us and saying that the deployment was unlawful. Unfortunately, that was stayed on an emergency basis by the Ninth Circuit. And then we proceeded in the case to demonstrate that the National Guard, the federalized National Guard, and the Marines as deployed, and there was nearly 5,000 military members deployed, that they were violating the Posse Comitatus Act because they were involved in things like stops and detentions, searches and seizures, crowd control, traffic control, riot control, all of which are civilian law enforcement. The judge agreed with us on that as well. So there was a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. So we feel like that our arguments that we made are a good blueprint for what other cities can use and other states, what New York might consider if the factual circumstances are similar. I will say that some of the factual circumstances are different in the cases since LA. In Washington, D.C., the commander-in-chief of the National Guard is not, there's no governor in D.C. The commander-in-chief is the president of the United States. In California, the commander-in-chief is governor of California unless and until there's a trigger and an ability for the president to take over and federalize the National Guard. I'll also say that the president has been very clear about the desire to deploy the military to fight crime. And that is like the definition of the violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. That is the definition of civilian law enforcement, the thing that is prohibited by the Posse Comitatus Act. And so I think there'd be really strong grounds to challenge the deployment of the National Guard. I don't think there's going to be an invasion or a rebellion or inability to enforce the laws, based on the election of Mayor Mandami. And if the military is used to enforce the criminal laws, then that's definitely a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. I'll say that there's an interesting approach that the Trump administration is using right now. There was a lot of talk about, and even Trump talking about it, about the military being sent to Chicago. And that didn't happen. What happened instead? The military was deployed to Memphis, Tennessee. And Memphis, Tennessee has a Democratic mayor, but Tennessee has a Republican governor. And the Republican governor asked for the National Guard to come in. And when that occurs, there's no federalization of the National Guard, and thus no violation of the Posse Comitatus Act under those circumstances. So I was wondering why the National Guard went to Illinois or went to Tennessee instead of Illinois, and it might be a pattern that we see where there are red state governors that authorize National Guard troops to come in and be deployed to cities with blue mayors.
Thank you. Questions? Yes. And if you could push the button for the microphone.
Oh, okay. So my question is that I'm an international student. I've come from India here. I'm not part of law school, but I'm a lawyer, and I'm currently pursuing public administration in CEPA. My question is that the president passing proclamation, I don't understand the US law very much, but president using the power of passing proclamation without congressional discussions, especially I want to take example of the recent policy that has been introduced of putting a $100,000 fee on H-1B visas. I want to question what's the legality of it. Is it a disguised policy decision that's been going on? And especially, it's my own interest as well. So my question is, especially California, if we talk about California state, most of the technological industry has a high population of immigrant workers. What are the consequences of it, and especially what is the legality in that? I hope I was able to frame it.
Yeah, no, great question. So as law students and soon-to-be lawyers, this is a really important point, because some people look at the president and say, it's an official executive order. I saw it. It's on official White House letterhead, and it says that birthright citizenship is over, or it says that H-1B visas now you have to pay $100,000 instead of the lower prior fee. And he's the president, he's duly elected, it's on official letterhead, it's the law. No, not how it works. The executive orders need, the Constitution, obviously, is the most powerful document, legal document in our nation. If you violate the Constitution, it's unlawful. It doesn't matter if Congress passed it, if the president issues an executive order. So an attempt to do something that's unconstitutional is not lawful. The president has done that multiple times, unfortunately. There's also other laws that govern executive functions. There's some things that could be lawful if done right. A repeal of a constitutional amendment, a change to the Constitution, can be done if done right. I talked about that. The votes in the House, the votes by the states. And some of the things the president is trying to do maybe could be done through Congress. And some of the things maybe he could do in the executive branch alone, but he needs to comply with the Administrative Procedures Act, which is actually very important right now. It's not something that's super sexy and exciting, like, yay, administrative law. But it needs to be followed. And we have brought multiple lawsuits where we've prevailed based on the failure to comply with the Administrative Procedures Act. You need to have notice and comment. You have to have a reason that's not arbitrary and capricious to change current rules that have gone through the rulemaking process. And if he hasn't complied with that, then even raising the fee on H-1B visas could violate the law. So lawyers can understand that. A lot of the public doesn't. And that's why we bring the lawsuits, to make sure that the law is complied with. But you know, what is he trying to accomplish with the $100,000 increase? It's a barrier. It's maybe an insurmountable barrier for many folks. It will keep folks who would otherwise get visas from coming here. And it is dangerous. Certainly California, big beneficiary of H-1B visas, of great talent coming from around the world here to help do and dream and innovate and create new businesses that have been some of the greatest businesses that California and the nation and the world have ever seen. But there's an ongoing effort to, it's an anti-immigrant effort. And I want to say this, I wish it weren't true, but the actions have shown it. And there's a huge delta, gap in distance between what Trump even says to this day, what he said on the campaign trail, that they're going to be going after violent, undocumented immigrants. And they're attacking the H-1B visa program, completely lawful program. They've gone after student visas. They've gone after refugee programs and asylum programs. We've had U.S. citizen children be deported. So they are not going after violent, undocumented criminals. They are attacking all pathways, it seems, that provide opportunities, even lawful with documentation, to be an immigrant in this country, unfortunately. So I think that's behind this effort. But whether it's legal is TBD, and our office is looking at it.
We promised to get you out of here by 1:10 because we know you have another engagement, but I want to thank you so much for really terrific remarks. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General.
Thanks, everybody.